Today we're digging into, well, a really significant shift in global trade, one that's already sending ripples through supply chains, diplomatic circles worldwide. We're talking about the U.S. and its evolving trade relations with two long-standing allies, Japan and South Korea. Specifically, these new reciprocal tariffs, set to take effect starting August 1st.
That's right. It's a critical development, and excerpts from Trump's tariffs, a new era of trade wars, reveal this isn't just some minor adjustment. It's a strategic escalation, really designed to fundamentally reshape bilateral trade dynamics. And it's backed by explicit threats of further hikes or maybe concessions down the line. Our mission today, to cut through the noise, understand the strategic thinking, the potential economic ripples, and most importantly, what this means for you, whether you're moving goods, managing logistics, or just, tracking the pulse of global commerce.
Welcome to Logistics Pulse, sponsored by Mothership. Skip the broker to save big on LTL shipments, or deliver same day nationwide.
Okay, let's cut to the core then. This August 1st deadline is looming. What exactly are these new tariffs? Who do they hit first?
All right, so starting August 1st, the U.S. plans to impose new 25% tariffs on a range of imports coming from Japan and South Korea. And this isn't just an isolated thing, it signals a deliberate, strategic escalation. The White House has set that firm August 1st deadline, making it really clear, without concessions from Tokyo and Seoul U.S. importers, they'll face sharply higher costs, period.
And why specifically Japan and South Korea? I mean, they've been cornerstones, right?
All right.
U.S. alliance as crucial trading partners for decades. What makes them targets now?
That's really the crux of it. These two nations, they are top global suppliers of really crucial goods. Think autos, advanced electronics, machinery, critical materials, the list goes on. But what's fascinating here and kind of critical is their deep integration into U.S. supply chains. They act as essential hubs for high-value components and technology.
Okay.
So imposing tariffs on these goods, it threatens to ripple across this huge network of U.S. manufacturers and retailers, people who absolutely depend on stable, predictable trade flows.
And this isn't an isolated incident, is it, this kind of tactic?
Yeah.
We've seen similar moves deployed with China in the past. How does this new approach, using it with allies, compare to those previous trade skirmishes?
You're right to draw that parallel. The Trump administration definitely used similar tactics before, levying rounds of punitive tariffs against China, trying to force negotiations on market access, IP, trade imbalances.
Right.
By expanding this strategy now to allies, like Japan and South Korea, the administration is signaling something bigger. Its intent seems to be to remake not just adversarial relationships, but the very terms of trade, even with strategic partners, the significant expansion of a known playbook, really.
So this isn't just about balancing trade ledgers then, it sounds like. Well,
Yeah.
some might argue this goes beyond simple economics, more into geopolitical strategy.
Yeah.
How does this move position the U.S. globally? What's the long-term play here?
That's a really insightful way to frame it. This approach, it seeks to use access to the huge U.S. consumer market as leverage, not just for economic gain, but to extract better terms and ensure trade is, as the administration puts it, fair and reciprocal.
Fair and reciprocal. And
It fundamentally recasts these decades-long alliances in, well, much more transactional terms. Historically, Japan and South Korea were key military allies, right? Their economic growth was actually encouraged through liberal trade access.
Sure, part of the post-war order.
Exactly. Now, that cooperative model seems to be giving way to a more competitive framework, one where market access has to be bargained for under the threat of tariffs. And get this, Trump's letters to their governments explicitly state tariffs can be raised or lowered depending on the trading relationship.
Really? Explicitly stated.
Explicitly. It's an unprecedented formalization of conditional trade policy. It effectively turns tariff schedules into active negotiating tools.
That is a profound shift. Okay, so what's the actual economic tightrope being walked here? What are the potential upsides if this strategy works? And the immediate downsides for businesses, for consumers?
Yeah, the economic impact is definitely complex, and it carries real risks. On one hand, look, if negotiations succeed, it could secure improved market access for U.S. goods. That's the potential upside.
Okay.
However, it immediately raises costs for U.S. importers right now, in the short term, especially for those who rely heavily on Japanese and South Korean intermediate goods, components and things.
Right.
Higher tariffs can squeeze profit margins, they can disrupt production schedules, and eventually that often translates into higher prices for American consumers.
How have the markets reacted to all this uncertainty? Are we seeing panic, or is it more measured?
Well, markets have definitely shown their unease. Wall Street saw some sell-offs on fears of broader trade disruption when this news first hit.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yet, interestingly, in Asia, markets have been a bit more measured, which suggests that maybe Tokyo and Seoul see some room for, let's say, tactical negotiation and compromise before that August 1st deadline hits, perhaps not expecting an immediate all-out trade war.
That raises a really critical point, though. Does the U.S. truly hold all the leverage here? What about Japan and South Korea's counter leverage? What tools do they have?
That's absolutely critical to understand, this reciprocal tariff model. It kind of assumes the U.S. can get meaningful concessions without triggering damaging retaliation.
Right. That's a one-way street.
But both Japan and South Korea possess significant counter leverage. They really do. They are indispensable suppliers of crucial components. Think semiconductors, advanced batteries, specialized manufacturing equipment, stuff the U.S. cannot easily just source somewhere else. Not quickly, anyway.
Okay.
And yes, they also have their own tariff tools and regulatory barriers they could potentially deploy in response.
So, if this standoff does escalate, if negotiations fail or stall, what are the broader consequences for the global economy and specifically for those listening who are navigating supply chains day to day?
Well, if the standoff escalates, it risks fragmenting the very supply chains that underpin global production. That could slow growth on both sides of the Pacific. It also complicates efforts, to maintain technological leadership, which is a big strategic goal. For supply chain planners listening, this uncertainty just adds another layer of complexity to an already volatile trade environment. It demands new strategies for resilience, for flexibility.
Okay, that brings us right to the core of this deep dive for you listening. Whether you're involved in shipping, logistics, maybe leading a supply chain team, what are the concrete actionable steps you need to be considering right now?
Right. Our sources provide some truly valuable insights here. Practical stuff for operating in this new reality. Let's start with shippers. If you're moving goods between the U.S. and East Asia, prepare for the very real possibility of 25% tariffs hitting your imports after August 1st. Even if negotiations eventually reduce those rates later on, the initial levies could immediately disrupt your budgets.
So for shippers, it's really about modeling different scenarios then, running the numbers.
Exactly. You should be modeling multiple tariff scenarios in your freight cost planning right now. Explore alternative sourcing. Look at inventory strategies, maybe hold more or less, or even different routing options to try and maintain margins and fulfill those customer commitments without interruption.
Makes sense. Proactive planning.
It's all about proactive planning.
And what about the carriers out there? How do they navigate potential changes in shipping volumes or routes? This must impact them hugely.
Oh, absolutely. Carriers should anticipate potential shifts in shipping volumes, particularly on those U.S.-Japan and U.S.-South Korea lanes, as these tariffs reshape demand patterns. Higher costs might dampen the flow of certain goods, while complex rerouting may be through third countries or using transshipment hubs that could become more attractive for some shippers trying to avoid the direct hit.
So how can carriers best prepare for that kind of volatility? It sounds messy.
It can be. Proactively coordinating with shippers is key. Planning flexible schedules together, adjusting capacity where needed, and really focusing on maintaining service quality through the disruption. That will help mitigate the chaos and also allow carriers to capture those shifting demand patterns in this evolving market.
Okay. And finally, for the supply chain leaders listening, this isn't just about immediate cost pressures, is it? It sounds like a much deeper, more strategic reevaluation is probably needed.
Absolutely, 100%. It's essential to take a strategic view of these policy shifts beyond just the immediate cost hits. That means meticulously mapping your supplier exposure in Japan and South Korea. Know exactly where you're vulnerable.
Knowing your weak spots.
Precisely. Assessing the availability of substitute suppliers, can you even get these parts elsewhere? And proactively renegotiating contracts to clarify those tariff pass-through clauses. Who pays when tariffs hit?
So fundamentally, it's about building in more resilience from the ground up, making the chain stronger.
That's the goal. Investing in greater supply chain flexibility, whether that's through diversification, not putting all your eggs in one basket, or nearshoring or dual sourcing strategies, all of that will significantly reduce vulnerability to these kinds of policy swings. It positions companies much better to respond to this new reality of trade, a reality where the U.S. is actively seeking to dictate terms through negotiation and leverage.
We've really unpacked quite a bit here. How one specific policy decision can create these immense ripples. Across global supply chains, sure, but also redefining long-standing international relationships.
It's truly fascinating. What these strategic moves highlight is that trade isn't just about economic efficiency anymore, not solely. It's increasingly a powerful tool for geopolitical leverage, for renegotiating the very terms of global engagement. This deep dive, we hope, has given you a clearer picture of that complex web of factors at play.
So a final thought for you to take away. As you consider the implications of these tariffs, think about this. How might this shift from cooperative trade towards more conditional transactional policies? How might that permanently alter the architecture of global alliances in the 21st century? Something to ponder.
For more insights like these, don't forget to subscribe to Logistics Pulse on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.